What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. It's Monday. We're indulging in a little bit of mayhem. Yeah, a bit of a quiet weekend in terms of Warhammer 40k events. Obviously, other stuff elsewhere within the community. Not quite as quiet this weekend, but that said, we did have a big Supermajor that we want to talk about. The Leeds Supermajor went down almost 300 players. And some really fascinating results in the top cut, which I am excited about. How's it going, everybody in the chat? What's up? Yeah, sorry, it was a couple minutes late. I actually literally just woke up. It's been a roller coaster ride. Anyway, a little bit of housekeeping to get done before we dive into the content here. First thing is that after this stream goes live, I'm going to be live for a really long time. I'm going to be live over on my Twitch. Let me throw a link to my Twitch here. Getting rest in this economy, and literally couldn't even imagine. The number of hours I've gotten to sleep in the last like 3 days is 1-digit number. But I'm going to be live with a game playing against Chaos Knights. We're playing Salamanders. So we're playing Salamanders immediately after this. This show is an hour earlier than normal because we had a game scheduled at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern time, so about an hour 50 from now. After that, there will be a brief respite. And then we'll be streaming the Pod 75 finals over on the Twitch as well. That's going to be, it's actually a Thousand Suns mirror, but it's a Warpforged Cabal versus a Grand Coven. So two very different styles of lists. So that should be interesting. I'm excited to talk about that one. But yeah, that's what's going on. Yeah, so some interesting results from Leeds Supermajor, which is what we want to dive into today. The big thing was that we are seeing some results from Subterranean Assault, which everyone expected to see, and then suddenly it was like, well, Knights are kind of a whole thing. But apparently, the Subterranean Assault lists were able to get around Knights or through Knights, in this case, which means there might be some technology that we can use to actually beat Knights with Tyranids, which seems like a physical impossibility, or has seemed like that up until this point. So I think that'll be good. Yeah, so if you're looking for 40k content, holy crap, do we have a ton of it between now and the end of today. In addition to that, I believe that I will be live both. I think I will be live essentially every day this week. I am going to begin a new show on Wednesday, I think, where we talk about some more low-key stuff. We do some Reddit posts and memes and things like that. So I will be live on Wednesday doing that this week. And then Friday through Sunday, I'm going to be over in Tennessee for the ATC. They've invited me over there to live stream that again for the second year running. And I don't know if I'm streaming the 5-man teams event or the 8-man teams event. I think it's probably the 8-man teams event, but either way, I will be live for 3 straight days covering live team 40k. Please go check me out over there. I don't have an event page up for that yet, but I will put one up shortly as soon as I have the opportunity to. Heard about Black Templars winning a GDC this weekend. It was the Githammer Summer WOG. I talked about that last week. That was last week, chat. It was not this week. But if you watch my Best Armies in 40k video from last week, I covered that list. But yeah. Anyway, let's dive in, I think, right? I think we're good. I think that's all I wanted to talk about. How about you, chat? Sleep is overrated. So true. You don't get any work done when you sleep. That's crazy. It's amazing. You know, we have to adopt that Sigma grind set where we just don't sleep. So we want to talk about the Leeds GT this week primarily. 286 players, all descending upon the United Kingdom. This was streamed by it's put on by the UKTC, UK Tournament Circuit. It was streamed by the UKTC events channel, and I guess what people have told me, or at least in comments sections and things, is that there were maybe a little bit of drama with the live stream. I I literally have only heard about that in comment sections from people dropping sort of information. So I have not done my own research on that. Might be worth taking a peek at because it may throw the final undefeated top player into contention. Well, I don't know. We'll see. It sounds like kind of an awkward thing. Now, Josh Roberts did win it. If there is like weirdness with his gameplay, that's not good because he's the balance guy. So I think this is a man who, if anybody, we should hold to a high standard. But again, I'm not working off any actual personal information yet. So that may be something that I do some research on later this week. Anyway, we're going to move on from that and not talk about it right now because what I want to do is dive into not only check out what's back, chat, the draws. The chapter approved 2025 draws are back. We have undefeated players who did not make the top cut because they had a draw in round 2 and then won all of their other games. Both Necrons and Blood Angels have done that. But we also see a bunch of really interesting results in the top here. Space Wolves, Tyranids going undefeated. It would never say it ain't so. Yeah, people say you can see him on the stream game. Yeah, that's what I was told. Is that it's pretty obvious on stream, and people are upset about it. So I don't know. We'll have to take a peek at that at some point. Curious question: based on how Chaos Knights datasheet updates and new detachments, which one have been covering the most, or been seeing the most? So right now, I think Lords of Dread is the most popular. However, we also saw Infernal Lance get some work done this weekend, specifically in this event. This list is an Infernal Lance list, but I covered that in my video this morning. So go watch my video this morning if you want to hear about that one. I think we shouldn't bury the lead. I think we should talk about Tyranids, chat. Let's dive in. So both Scott Morris and Tim Verbeek went X1 with Tyranids. Obviously, this was a single elim. So as soon as they got to top cut and they lost a game, then they got cut out. So Tim Verbeek only went 5-1. Scott Morris over here went 6-1. I think we'll start at, towards the bottom, 6th place, Tim. And I'm interested to see his path to victory here. Looks like oops, I have done something. Yeah, okay. Looks like he beat World Eaters, Death Guard. I do think that this is actually not a bad matchup for Subterranean Assault. It's not like Death Guard's I think it'd be hard for basically anyone just because of the statistical sort of dominance that they have over everyone else's offensive profiles. But to be fair, they aren't very good at screening. Unless they're running like multiple Rhinos and multiple Poxwalker units. In this case, we only have 2 Poxwalker units and we only have 1 Rhino. The other thing too is that they have, it sounds weird, but Death Guard kind of have below average defensive profiles, not because as a faction their defensive stat lines are not good, but because they focus on these light vehicles. So every single unit that they have is in the range to get one shot by a Tyranid monster, which not many units can, like, not many factions can boast. So oftentimes what happens is that the Tyranid player will really easily like squeegee away their screens and then doom drop and kill everything that engages. Will kill one thing, right? So you're gonna kill like half of this in one go. Then your opponent gets to like counterattack you under shadow probably, and then you get to do it again. And the games I have seen with Death Guard have not been super good into most Subterranean Assault builds, which is really interesting. There's a mirror match, which sounds absolutely fucking miserable. Beat a scintillating Legion list. That's a fascinating matchup. Interesting. Leagues of Votan, and then lost to Canoptek Court, Mark Crumble home with that one, which does make sense. Tyranids, I think they're certainly not the worst thing at punching through Canoptek Wraiths. They do have like this mass of really mid-strength, like multi-damage attacks, but I don't. The question is whether they have enough of it, and I guess the answer is no, fortunately for them. So no knights on the horizon here. So it seems like in this case, in Tim's case here, he at least dodged any of the super heavy factions, which is good to sort of like work out. Only have 3 big knights. Lancer, Abominator, Rampager, Desecrator. Been using Trade Taurus and Infernal, those 3, and Rodriguez. Yeah, they're like 3 or 4 bigs in Rodriguez, and then you like follow it up with Carnivores. It seems pretty good too. You definitely don't have to go all bigs, although the all bigs lists are pretty effective. Now, what is in the list in particular? We have Swarmlord plus a Neurotyrant plus a Trigon Prime. So Swarmlord's oftentimes in here because any of the Hive Tyrant profiles get like, because you get reroll once to hit as the first part of the Subterranean Assault detachment ability. The any of the Hive Tyrant profiles get kind of insane because the big weakness of that profile is that they hit on 2s with no fixing, right? So naturally they will drop like 1 to 2 attacks on the first part of the attack sequence. If you can make that more consistent, so like Invasion Fleet does this by giving you like perfectly adapted plus sustained hits or something, and in this case you're getting reroll once they hit, it means that you get all your attacks through to the wound step, and because you're twin linked, your wound step's pretty consistent as well. So Swarmlord has 8 3 damage attacks with full hit and wound rerolls in this detachment, which is wild. He's also got a bit of a delivery problem naturally, where oftentimes he has a tough time actually getting himself in range to broadcast his aura onto people. And this detachment does not have that problem. He can just tunnel network wherever he needs to be on the battlefield. So when you are counterattacking into this, right, we're in that Death Guard matchup, for example, and they have spent a turn, the zone throws have blasted away a screen. You've used like Tyrannofexes or whatever to kill another screening unit, and then the next turn in, you doom drop in, you drop like a Norn Emissary on your opponent, you drop Zone Thropes on your opponent, and then you tunnel network Swarmlord into a relevant position. Now, not only are you being shadowed, and the entire Tyranid army is engaging you, but also all of your CP costs are increased by 1. So on that go turn, the Swarmlord gets into an optimal position, and he is an absolute menace, especially if you're fighting against another sort of combat army. Now, this is interesting. We have a Shock Cannon Hive Guard unit. Fucking holy shit. Has this detachment have we finally gotten to the point that Hive Guard are not a raging dumpster fire of a unit? I think part of the thing is that it has a ready-made outlet for ignore cover. So if we take a peek at our Hive Guard unit here, we're taking Shock Cannons, which is a what's the word? A concession to, I think, the Knights matchup, because like they're anti-vehicle too. They're not devastating or anything, but they are going to be just handing you a bunch of saves on 2 up. The big downside that Shock Cannons have always had is that their AP value is fucking trash. So they can hand you a bunch of saves, but like 90% of vehicles in the game will just shrug them off and maybe take 3 damage. But as soon as you can use the stratagem, it's called something enfilading fusillade, I think is what it's called. The Subterranean Assault stratagem to grant sustained hits and ignore cover. That is a really good combo with that, because as soon as you can grant ignore cover to those AP1 weapons, they get much better. Enfilading emergence, excuse me. Now, the attack volume's still really low. Oh, hello. Hello, Wahapedia. Your pop-up ads are becoming more obtrusive, which I'm not a huge fan of. But I guess it's good enough. So at least they're a 3+ ballistic skill, right? It's sustained hits from the stratagems, like essentially plush-ish 1 to hit, and then you get rerolls. So theoretically, you're converting 11-ish of the attacks. Those wound on 2s, so you'll probably drop 2 on the wound roll, and you hand your opponent like 9 AP1 ignore cover 3 damage saves. Most vehicles are saving on 4s, which means they're going to take like 4-ish, which is 12 damage. So that's pretty good. It's not going to kill, a big vehicle by itself, but it will tune them up to the point where you can kill them with other stuff like Rupture Cannon, Tyrannofexes, or Exocrines. So definitely a really interesting inclusion here that we've like started to see a little bit more and more. I think almost entirely because Knights are a really powerful metagame contender right now. So we're between Knights and Death Guard, we're guaranteed to see stuff that these guys can kill. They're actually really good at a Death Guard, I guess, because like they will just one tap a heavy blight launcher, bloat drone, or a Mephitic Blight Hauler or something, and so like those, there's like no chance those guys survive. So you just get like pure value, and if you can cut really acute lines of sight where you don't get counterattacked quite that often, that much. The Hive Guard actually might just like do that for free if you just tunnel network them around. So I don't know. I guess like it's definitely growing on me, the inclusion of this. It's interesting that they got hit with the demon matchup with a shock cannon Hive Guard unit in the list. That's basically 180 dead points. But on the flip side, like it is also just 24 wounds of guys that you can use to screen or you can use to like do utility stuff. So maybe it's fine. They are expensive, but you know, if you're not getting value out of the gun. And I guess you could just like throw 12 shots into pink horrors or something and call it a day. But it's cool to see those guys like actually on the battlefield, which is pretty wild. Yeah. So I don't like 12-ish damage on average to almost any vehicle profile for 1 CP is like it's probably good enough, right? I think that's okay. Without having to attach any other characters or anything to the unit, which is definitely good. It also gives the army a little bit more of a game plan against like dedicated transport spam, because these guys can hop in and pay a CP and just kill a rhino immediately. Which is something that the detachment in general like really struggles against, because dedicated transports are very good at screening, and very often you'll like jump into a position where you can attack the transport, but it's very difficult to deep strike into a position where you can also attack the unit that then disembarks the transport that was just killed. So your opponent gets to pull double duty out of that transport essentially. But having a unit that can like hop around and kill them is probably very relevant. Interesting stuff. If they don't kill the first ball, you could also Overwatch on 4s. Yeah, Overwatch on 4s ruling 1's actually pretty reasonable for sure. Moving on from that, so we've double Lictor, a Neurogaunt unit, double Raveners to build tunnels with, a Zoanthrope unit to hang out with, a Neuro Tyrant, a Norn Emissary, and double Tyrannosaxes. Now, the Zoanthropes are interesting to me because they feel very terrain dependent, and I know that there's like I don't know the particulars of the UKTC terrain format, but I know that there is a kind of there's a belief, I guess, that it's very open, and the Zoanthropes, I think, would prefer closed terrain systems, because one thing that they do is that they're so squishy, right? The unit just immediately dies like as soon as it commits, essentially. It's basically like they have the one-shot ability on all their guns, because they will only get to attack with them one time, because they're immediately going to die. However, if you have really tight lines of sight, and they can actually like teleport around, they can tunnel network around to get like super narrow line of sight to individual enemies, and without worrying about counterattack, they're actually very powerful. Otherwise, they're kind of expensive for what they do. Although it is nice to get more of this kind of like tank killing profile. So between the Zoanthropes and the Hive Guard, we do have these 2 units that can deal pretty significant damage coming out of Deep Strike. We then have a Norn Emissary, as well as double Tyrannosax. So what's likely going to happen is that we're going to try to basically pull focus onto the Norn Emissary. You can singular purpose an objective and then just teleport the Norn Emissary onto it. And so it's very easy to deliver that to wherever it needs to be. The singular purpose, I believe, also does not need to... It does not require that the Norn is on the battlefield to choose an objective, which will allow it to start in reserve, potentially. Just at the start of the first battle round, you can choose one or the other. So even if you start the Norn in strategic reserve and then tunnel it in onto the objective, it's going to be in a pretty sweet spot. And that precludes the possibility that the Norn gets like movement blocked or screened off of that objective, because it's going to be able to charge onto it whenever it needs to. So if you can deliver the Norn to the singular purpose target immediately, and then also dive with the Hive Guard and the Zoanthropes and the Tyrannosaxes, it's unlikely that your opponent will have the shooting to kill all of them. And then you'll theoretically get to attack back with the majority of that stuff on the counter attack. Like even if you lose the Norn, it's probably going to take your opponent an entire round to kill it, and then you just get another round of shooting with the Tyrannosaxes, and hopefully that's crippling damage. So I think I've seen these get killed a lot. I've seen a lot of dead zone thropes in my time. But on the flip side, in the universe where we also have Hive Guard, which is basically a similar unit for cheaper now in this detachment specifically, then you actually you pull so much focus from them, and that's probably fine. I do think that this detachment really does like the Nero Tyrants because the shadow turn is so impactful because you often want to shadow your opponent at the time that you are sort of doom dropping them. And having that -1 on everything is such a big deal. You can really mess with your opponent if you can broadcast -2 onto most of your opponent's stuff because of the nearby synapse creatures. So the Emissary and the Trigon Prime and the Swarmlord engaging things will project another -1 Battleshock test aura from Shadow. And then most of that stuff is going to fail. So your opponent, if they're engaged, they have to start taking desperate breakout tests. They can't use interrupts. They can't use defensive strats. It gets kind of a nightmare, and oftentimes their scoring is affected too. So it seems a little weird, but I think Subterranean Assault is the one detachment that actually synergizes with Shadow and the Warp the best, because having one big go turn for Tyranids is perfectly synergistic with the army ability, which is good. Shadow your opponent on. It depends on the situation. There's no hard and fast rule about when you should shadow. Generally speaking, in Subterranean Assault, you almost always want to shadow on the turn where you deploy all of your reserves. So, or the round where you deploy all your reserves, and the start of your opponent's subsequent turn. So usually the way that this detachment will work is that the first round or so will be a lot of jockeying. It plays very passively in battle round 1. But you'll use the zone tropes on the table. Sometimes you use Tyranofexes. I guess in this detachment we could use the Hive Guard. And you use your Flamers to try to knock down screens that your opponent has. And you try to set up a situation where you can then put all of the big stuff. So the Norns, the Tyranofexes, you could charge your opponent with the Trigon Prime, for example. And you put all your big stuff into your opponent and overload them. And that kind of gets around the fact that Tyranid offensive profiles aren't that great, because usually most of your army will get a second round of attacking because your opponent has to kill your entire army in one turn effectively, which basically nobody can do, especially for Tyranids that are kind of high survivability. So that's the turn where you drop all your reserves and try to kill your opponent. That's the turn that you shadow them immediately after that. Let's move on to Scott Morris's Tyranids. So 6-0-1 in this one. We did grab an extra win, and it looks like we are also running the Swarmlord in this list as well. So it looks like we are sort of settling on Swarmlord as the piece du jour, I guess, for Subterranean Assault. We have in this list a hyper-adapted Ravener squad, so a little bit of heavier punching Raveners. I guess the interesting question is whether or not we attach these guys into a Ravener unit. I think it's kind of it's sort of 6-1, half does the other. It's probably kind of matchup dependent. If your opponent has big super heavy stuff that you want to just punch down, the hyper adapted Raveners getting the opportunity to up down is a big deal. Plus, they can affect all of your other Raveners inside the unit with their leadership abilities. So sustained hits 1, plus they're in the Synapse Aura, so they're +1 strength. They'll wound most vehicles on 5s with full rerolls, so it's a 50% conversion. And the damage that they can put out is actually pretty impressive. The downside is that a 10-man Ravener squad is basically the easiest thing in the world to kill. They're so squishy. It's wild. So your opponent has a really easy time getting line of sight with one thing, and then heaven forbid that they shoot you with a Forge Fiend or something that has multiple blast weapons and you're a 10-man squad, because then they're gonna double duty on all those blast attacks, and it's gonna be an absolute Ravener slaughter. So if you need to use it as a peace trading unit, and leaving it alone is pretty good, but it also does have some benefits if you have to kill big stuff when you attach it. So I think oftentimes it depends on the matchup, right? You could just not attach these guys. From there, we have a Swarmlord. We also have a Trigon Prime. Pretty standard stuff that we just talked about. This list is taking double gargoyles, which I actually really like. The cool thing about the gargoyles is that they seem like they're an onboard shooting unit, right? Where you're oh, I'm going to use them to go do secondaries. But when you deploy them via tunnels, they actually get really obnoxious for your opponent, because you can set up a situation where, for example, we're charging somebody with a Trigon, right? We're gonna go in and we're gonna blow up a tank. and we're worried about counterattacking. So you set up the gargoyles like sort of ahead of the Trigon in a different position, and then you use their shoot and scoot to then move them after attacking. They deploy 6 inches away from the enemy and then move 6 inches after shooting. So they are, by definition, or they can be by definition, basically 1 inch away from your opponent's models, as long as they don't enter engagement range. This does a couple different things. First of all, it move blocks everything. It's so obnoxious. So in this like situation where you're trying to like engage with your whole army, and you're not only shadowing your opponent, you're not only threat overloading them, but you're also just putting gargoyles like physically in front of their biggest threats. That can just absolutely end the game. If they can't like appropriately respond to the Swarm Lord and the Trigon beating the crap out of them, then the game's over, right? They're just going to get another round of attacking. They're going to do crippling damage, and it's going to be GG. But they also can contest objectives. They can steal objectives away without your opponent being able to attack them in the fight phase. So like most of the time, if we're talking about Hormigons, right, for example, a Hormigon unit they're gonna drop in 6 inches, or they're gonna, sort of set up and then advance and charge onto an objective. And your opponent's gonna get the opportunity to attack them back. So that opens them up for a lot of counterattack, a lot of like heroic intervention, Overwatch, obviously, like the Hormigons could potentially get caught by, and the gargoyles fade all of those pitfalls. So there's never a situation where Hormigons have to charge on an objective. They accidentally charge too far, trigger heroic intervention from like, I don't know, something spooky, like a Sanguinary Guard squad that just one-shots the unit, and suddenly the objective is uncontested. The gargoyles will just move 6 inches to take it, and then just like stare at your opponent. So there's like basically no counterplay to gargoyles taking your objective as long as they can set up close enough to it. So they're real. I mean, they're good at every detachment, right? It's just like the reason that this data sheet has gone up like 15 points since the start of the edition is because it's the best data sheet in the Tyranid faction, pretty close to it anyway. But it does have some like extra really funny synergy with this detachment too. Imagine World Eater Fortunes. Yeah, you just like set up your 10-man hyper adapted Ravener brick, and then they're just like, I'll Overwatch, I guess, to kill 5 of them. Although that might be a situation where you do not attach them, right? World Eaters usually play like this kind of MSU style where you don't actually need the giant huge brick of guys, so that might be okay. You only attach them versus knights. Yeah, I think that's basically how it's going to end out for sure. We've got double Exocrine, the Hive Guard, the Shock Cannon Hive Guard make their return. I guess the math is that this unit is good in this detachment. We finally found the way for Hive Guard to be good. If both of the top tier players at the Leeds Supermajor were using this 6-man brick, that's impressive. Double Raveners in order to build tunnels, a Lictor, and double Tyrannofex and Thrower cannons. Yeah, so the core of the list is very similar. This one's a little bit more scoring heavy, though. What were the matches that we saw here? Oh, excuse me, Scott Morris. What did you play against, Scott? Take a peek at our opponents. Looks like we beat Dark Angels, Wrath of the Rock. That's interesting. I know that there was some oh Jesus, double Judiciaries. The more aggressive Tyranid builds that are like running multiple Haruspexes, for example, seem like they struggle quite a bit with this list in particular, because it does have this huge predominance of fight first, right? Double Judiciar plus Lionel Johnson. So if you're not killing those units, the Judiciar units in the shooting phase, right, with your zone throw bricks or whatever, and I don't know what these are attaching into. Probably Inner Circle Companions. Yeah, we actually saw that elsewhere this weekend. Wrath of the Rock and ICC with the Judiciar for the fight first. If you're forced to engage that stuff with the what's the word, with melee attacks, with like a Haruspex or another sort of melee threat, then the fight first is actually like ruinous to you. Lionel Johnson's in there as well as a scary intervention threat, and then if you're kind of focusing a lot of that defensive tech on Deathwing Knights, which it doesn't look like we are in this particular list, that can also kind of like stifle you too, because Tyranids are kind of or Tyranid melee profiles, I should say, are not very good into Deathwing Knights. So running into Deathwing Knights and fight first is brutal. We also have Leagues of Votan. On Ultramarine Gladius Task Force, pretty standard Gladius Task Force. Oh, this one has 12 or 6 Blade Guard veterans. That's cool. Plus Repulsor Executioners. Nice. Oh, Repulsor Executioners just like carrying around Blade Guard veterans. It's kind of cute. I like it. Gene Stealer Cults. That feels like kind of a mirror match, to be honest. As well as Stormlands Task Force. A Lord of Dread, so they did get through Big Knights at least one time. This looks like it's a little bit of a well-rounded list. That is Knight Rampager, Knight Despoiler, double Knight Rampager, excuse me, Knight Despoiler. The downside here, obviously, for the Knights is that their screening's not great. As soon as you kill the Nurgle demons, right, everything's just kind of out in the open. And then the super heavies in particular, like, do have like being able to threat overload into a single super heavy and blow it out is a big deal. Now, the Knight Tyrant has, I believe, a Deep Strike Denial Aura, so he's actually immune to the 6-inch drop. Yeah, you cannot set up reinforcements within 12 inches of him. However, if you kill the other Knights, like the other Knights don't have that, right? And so the Tyrant can only protect one area of the battlefield. And he is like a 400 point like doom guy, so it's not necessarily the case that he can protect like enough of the battlefield to keep himself safe. He's also really awkward into Tyrannofexes in specific because he has the Volcano Lance, which is where most of his anti-tank is coming from. And if he does get a wound through onto Tyrannofex, he can blank the Volcano Lance shot if it doesn't get multiple hits through, and then. Which is fairly unlikely. Like your average conversion for the Volcano Lance is one attack, and the ablative carapace that you have on the Tyrannofex can blank that. And then the little guns are like, he might take a couple hits from the missile launchers, but the other little guns are not very well suited to kill his defensive profile. They'd much rather be shooting at like the heavy infantry stuff, the Raveners and the Hive Guard. So that's actually like a really like interesting profile mismatch. And then the Tyrannofexes just turn around and like gat back in. They're also T12 2+ save, which is the worst possible case for the double Gatling cannon despoilers. So those guys are actually really bad into that particular matchup too. Although they're really good into stuff like the Hive Guard, so it's not the end of the world. It's not like they don't have anything good to shoot at. But if you can Alpha Strike and kill that guy, and then you're just fighting Rampagers who are like trying to engage you in melee, then you're probably in a pretty good spot. So fascinating chance. Tyranids beating Knights, can you imagine? And then he lost to Josh Roberts with Stormlands Task Force. But that's our Tyranid players today, folks. That's what we got. This is why Chaos Knights need to run 5 Tyrants. If that's true, that would do it, chat. You wouldn't get meleeed, but you would just get shot a bunch, I guess. But 5 Tyrants, I don't know if that's the direction, but I don't know. It does sound pretty spooky for sure. Should we move on and talk about some other factions, chat? There was a Chaos Knights in here. We'll discuss this sort of X1 Chaos Knights really quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on it. It is a Lords of Dread Callum Byers. Looks like running 4 bigs. A Rampager with Blade of Celerity, so that's fight first. A Knight Tyrant with Warborn Stalker, so that's the uppy downy. This is just what the list that we were just talking about actually is what he was playing. So actually, we just talked about this list. The Rampager does a Mirror Fate, so it has the CP tax aura. So the 2 Rampagers like are kind of doing a very similar thing to the Tyranid list that we just talked about, where they're like kind of like they can force these really annoying offensive profiles down your opponent's throat and then make them really hard to interact with. So the one of the Rampagers you basically is unchargeable because the once per game fights first is just going to kill is just going to kill whatever engaged it, or at least most of whatever engaged it, and then it will stomp the rest of that the next turn. The other one is going to mess with all of your offensive stratagems. So makes it hard to sort of get like +1 to wound or +1 AP or all that stuff into this guy. Good stuff. Tyranid player 1 versus 2 Stompas this weekend with 250 models, 100 Hormagaunts, 120 Termagants. What? First of all, who runs 2 Stompas? In 2025, 2 Stompas? Post tactical, or excuse me, post more Daka nerf, people are unironically playing Stompas. Wild. What a world we live in, Chad. All right, let's talk about Space Wolves real quick here. Mark Owen. Now, this is, I guess, Index Space Wolves. Because somehow, despite the fact that we've had points for the Codex for like a month, like a full ass month, I guess it's still not legal. Which is, I guess, good for Space Wolves because man, I gave it a good old college try, but I think that supplement is actually like pretty dog shit with the current rules. It needs another look. Part of the problem is that like none of this stuff works synergistically with anything Space Marine related, and also not even with itself. There's like a lot of like weird anti-synergy inside that detachment or inside that army. So I don't know. It's just not very well written, I think. But we got one last hurrah with Champions of Rust, I guess, which is going the way of the dodo. Would actually maybe be okay if they just kept Champions of Rust because the detachment's really good. But I don't know. You can just play Gladius Task Force probably. We've got Bjorn the Fell-Handed, Logan Grimner, Ragnar Blackmane, Judy Sher, and a lieutenant with Combi Weapon. We do have a Bloodclaw squad, like a regular old Bloodclaw squad. Yeah, so this is, I guess, CP Tex Bjorn, not CP Gain Bjorn, because new Bjorn's like 20 points cheaper, I think, and he's great. I don't want to. He's good. He good. Plus, we get the Howl Logan for rerolls on the whole army, which is like what an ability to lose, by the way. What a glow down Logan Grimnar got, even though his model's really cool now. 5 Assault Intercessors, a 6-man Blade Guard veteran squad, Infiltrators, Scouts, 25 Wolfen with Storm Shields and Hammers, triple Predator Destructor for some backline shooting. Yeah, pretty standard stuff, I guess, for the Index version. So we have the Blade Guard veterans like to hang out with the Judy. Ragnar Blackman, I guess, attaches to the Blood Claws. I guess like we can double stack their charge buff, right? With his charge buff. And they're a good like infantry clear because they just have 1 million attacks, but they're not that like their output isn't that great. In the new codex, he gives them full wound rerolls, which is actually kind of sweet. But in this one, he just gives them advance and charge, so they get +1 attack and strength. So his profile goes to strength 9, right? He's like strength 9, 11 attacks. Does that sound right, Chad? I have to find his like original data sheet. I bet I just have it in here somewhere. On my big data sheet library. I do. So he gets +2 attacks and strength. So he goes +3/+3. Yeah. So 11 attacks and strength 9. Sustained hits 1. Who needs wound rerolls? Not me. I would never. I will simply wound you normally with my big fucking sword. Whoopa! Do you need to revisit the Codex supplement? It feels more like a Codex and not a supplement. I know. It's weird because like it feels like it's trying to be a Codex, but it's not. And like it would be like the worst Codex in the game if it was just immediately the Codex. It doesn't even have any of like the parts that are supposed to work together. But it feels like it's trying to be a Codex, but it like forgets that it doesn't like share keywords with the original units that are like in the rest of the faction. So it's like weird that it like has this stark distinction between Space Wolf and Space Marine units where they're like, it's like smashing 2 different factions together. It's like you play Space Wolves, but then you have Agent of the Imperium data sheets for like intercessors and stuff, which is super not very good. Definitely not a strong way to play. Funny how fast they are now. Thought Emperor's Children were meant to be the giga fast ones. I mean, they're like reasonably fast. It doesn't seem to me that they're like wildly like, like insanely fast. They're just like move 7. They're like +1 movement over what normal Space Marines are. Gonna be so annoying if Exemplar doesn't get the same treatment. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be annoying either way because that design philosophy I don't think works. I think it's just really bad. Like when we're doing the original Codex review for the spatial supplement, right? And we're like, man, think of all these cool, interesting combinations we can do where we like try to get sagas unlocked with like units attached to ranged attackers, like Hellblaster squads and stuff like that. And then realizing that literally none of that works is like pretty upsetting. And I don't know how you get around that, right? Without just rewriting all of the character attachment abilities. Like I don't know what the solution there is. I think it's just like I don't know. It just doesn't work. Like as a design ethos. And it feels like something that they should have learned previously because it's like so many factions have this style of unit where they can only attach to individual sort of other units, or so many units can only attach individual styles of character, and the limitations on list building is so stark that it's really obnoxious. There's like a bunch of really good examples, like Tyranids on release are a really good example. Like a Neuro Tyrant could only join Tyrant Guard. Okay, cool. With like basically no synergy with the Neuro Tyrant. Like it's a bad combo. Like why would we ever do that? Yeah, and it can't join anything else. Any other unit that would like to get +1 to hit. Warriors, no. Zoanthropes, no. All of these, like Hive Guard, no. This other stuff that would be a really interesting attachment where suddenly it's like it's actually a question whether or not you build that into your army. Just cut it all out. And specials feel like that, right? Every character has like one unit it attaches to and nothing else. You're like, okay, well, that's lame. Would love to attach it to something better. And honestly, like their character's really strong. Things like the Wolfguard battle leader, basically having 2 leadership abilities stacked together is big. That's a big deal. The downside is that the rest of the faction's so underpowered that he could just attach to basically anything in the Codex and it would be fine. Because the like other data sheets that you have access to are, I think, just worse than playing like basic Space Marines. I don't know. It is what it is. It's annoying, yeah, whichever they do. Yeah, so like it's annoying if Black Templars get the same treatment. It's annoying because that is going to be hard to make that Codex good. I'm not saying it's not like it can't be good, right? They could just torque the datasheet super hard so it doesn't matter, which they didn't do with Space Wolves. Space Wolves got damage decreases in addition to having more constrained attachment options. But it also, if they then don't do it, then Space Wolves are the only Codex that's written this way, and it's like super bizarre and like a gear check. Imagine a new player who wants to come in and play the cool Space Viking guys, and they have to like jump through all of these like bizarre, like weirdly counterintuitive hoops in order to actually build a list that's legal where they can attach their characters. I don't know. It's gonna be a whole thing. Archon couldn't attach to units that were hired to guard them at the start of the challenge. Oh yeah, with Incubi, they couldn't attach to Incubi. Fucking so silly. Yeah, man. We shouldn't harp on the 10th edition like hate train too much, but man, I miss.
Ryan G donated $5 through Super Chat.
Thanks for the Super Chat.
To blow your mind. What if Warriors could join Termagants, and the Termagants status sheet gives assault if led?
What if Warriors could join Termagants? I mean, that'd be cool. I think that they're getting more what's the word? Adventurous with their like attachment options. Like Warlock Conclaves are a great example, right? Like a unit that embeds instead of attaching, and then also gains an additional leadership benefit, or grants an additional leadership benefit if led. Cool design, dude. So yeah, I think they could do something very similar for sure. In the future, when the Codex first came out and they were like, okay, we're rewriting the Prime data sheet to this winged Prime guy. I was like, oh, sick. There's going to be like some really interesting options for like other Tyranid units to be led by this jump guy. Nah, fuck off. It's only gargoyles. Okay. But I was expecting to see like more stuff like that where you could add the Tyranid infantry characters to units. But we're talking about, we're malding about Space Wolves right now, Chad. We can't mald about Tyranids in the Space Wolf section of the video. Unacceptable. almost wondering if new Saga of the Bold would be better than Beast Slayer, closest thing to Index Champions for us. Yeah, I do like Saga of the Bold. Again, like I wish it was easier to trigger its sagas. The restriction that it is only specifically Space Wolf characters, not Space Marine characters in a Space Wolf army, is problematic to me in my opinion. Literally in the lore, the Termagants will shield warriors. They used to be a strat, right? You could give warriors a defensive buff if you had Termagants in front of them. You also just reinforce Hive Node was like everywhere for -1 damage on those guys. But yeah, I think that'd be super neat for sure. Obviously, like you run into downsides with blast weapons, like that Forge Fiend we were talking about earlier. It gets even worse. Suddenly, it's +9 attacks from blast instead of +3. But most of those are going to hit Termagants anyway, so it's fine. Definitely like it would be a cool interaction for sure. All right. Let's talk about some Necrons, chat. We had a bunch of Necrons in the top cut here. The biggest one is Mark Cromberholm, who is running Canoptek Court, which is fucking what a time to be alive. We've come full circle. What year is it, chat? Canoptek Court is winning events again. We're talking about Tyranid like Zone Throat bricks, and Canoptek Court is back at the top. Is it like, I don't know, like release 40k, like release edition release, like 2023 again? Pretty wild. So what are we rocking today? This is like a pretty classic triple Wraith list. So we should talk about Canoptek Court first, I guess, because it hasn't really been in the zeitgeist for an age. Necrons have cycled through so many meta detachments that it's been a million years since we've seen this one on the battlefield. So this gives you a Shadow of Chaos style of effect that affects your Cryptek and Canoptek units. So each time a unit, either with an attached Cryptek at all, so a unit with a like Oracan the Diviner inside it, or a Canoptek unit, which also includes things like Doomstalkers, makes an attack, they get hit rerolls of 1 baseline. That's, as it stands, the baseline detachment ability. Kind of like Subterranean Assault in that way. If you have Power Matrix in the area that you're wholly within, which means that you control the majority of objective markers in that area, plus your deployment zone is always in Power Matrix, then you gain full hit rerolls. And given the fact that most Canoptek Wraiths or Canoptek units are weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, the full hit rerolls is a big deal. The other thing is that when you're playing Wraiths, which are like relatively high OC, very aggressive units that are super hard to kill, they're going to take objectives before they attack in most cases. Either they're going to move on to them to take the majority of objectives in the center of the table to get the majority control in the middle, or they're going to charge onto them to get majority control in the fight phase. So this detachment ability is like asterisk, but really all of your Canoptek stuff rerolls all the time, which is a huge detachment ability. The other thing is that the enhancements are really strong for these Wraith units. One of them grants infiltrators. One of them deals mortal wounds when people charge you, which they're going to have to do because you're going to play really aggressively. The other one gives you wound rerolls of 1 in addition to the hit rerolls you get from Power Matrix. So this list usually focuses really heavily on everything that has the Canoptek keyword inside it. So the Canoptek Doomstalkers they go from being really kind of like a meme unit out in other detachments. I think there's a little bit of play with them in like Starshatter Arsenal because you can get +1 to hit, but their base ballistic skill is like super trash. So usually you don't want to spend the points on them. But when they are just standing there and getting full hit rerolls in addition to their improved Overwatch that they can do, the Canoptek Doomstalkers actually become very efficient for their points value. So they just become an unironically good unit for 140. We have 3 Canoptek Scarab Swarms for lighter utility stuff that you don't have to commit the Canoptek Wraiths into, as long as you keep a Technomancer within 6 inches of the back model in the Swarm unit. They gain OC1, so they can like cleanse and establish locus and sabotage and all that stuff in order to score utility things. And then 18 Canoptek Wraiths plus 1 unit's going to get a Cryptothrall in it to make it a little bit tougher to kill. 3 units of Death Marks just as deep striking utility. Plus looks like 3 units of 3 Locust Destroyers again, because they're largely sort of self-sufficient. So you have a lot of these kind of relatively resilient little units running around the battlefield, and the Locust Destroyers get rerolls baked in. So if they target something on an objective, so they sort of function like an honorary Canoptek unit where they don't really need the other help from the rest of the army in order to get value. But otherwise, like, it's just a 3-man unit you can use to walk around and grab objectives and stuff. So very scoring pilled, right? We have essentially like potentially like 6 utility units plus the Scarab, so like 9 utility-esque units. The Death Marks to a lesser extent, but also the Locust Destroyers can also just like clear stuff off objectives just fine. So you don't have to commit Wraiths to the fight. And then obviously you have like the normal brick of Wraiths plus Doomstalkers in the background there just to like attrition your opponent into oblivion. And that's usually what this army does. It's very difficult to like profitably engage with Wraiths in almost any circumstance, and there's 18 of them here. So with hit rerolls. So once you actually like charge them and fail to kill them, they actually still have to deal damage back to you as well, which is pretty wild. Fun fact: Canoptek Court itself wasn't really nerfed rules wise since it came out. Yeah, it was just It was well, points have changed a little bit. Canoptek rates going down recently certainly I think helped them quite a bit, but also there's like there's the stuff around it changed, right? Where people they basically cycled through every other detachment, right? Awakened Dynasty, Hypercrypt Legion, Starshatter Arsenal. They've all like gone around the ring, but the wraiths and stuff did get points ups since release, right? And they since came down like 10 or 20 points, right? Between in the most recent update, which is probably why we're seeing this list back. Like once you gain 30 or 40 points back, it's kind of a big deal because that's an entire extra utility unit you can take. So you're definitely much more interested in taking multiple Canoptek rates. But for a while they were pretty expensive, if I remember correctly. I think they were up to like 240 points or something. I guess I could actually look at old. I think I have old Minotaurums in here. Do I have like the OG? I have the Minotaur from last year. This time last year. Are they in here? Canoptek rates? 250. Yeah. So they're currently 30 points cheaper than they were last year. So the actual like mechanics didn't get changed, but like this is 100 points more expensive of an army to play than it was previously, which is definitely I mean, if that's certainly also the Canoptek Doomstalkers were more expensive. You can tell that this was right as this detachment was being really, really popular because like this is June 24. This detachment, all the staples of this detachment got absolutely hammered, but that was like, you know, basically every Necron list was Canoptek Court at this point too. I think there's also a benefit that Canoptek Court's kind of easy to play. As long as you don't like accidentally give away your Technomancers, then the detachment's actually like mostly just straightforward. You just kind of like vibe in the middle of the table and attrition your opponent out. As long as your positioning's okay, you're usually fine. And so at that point, I think it was like really, really popular. It was fucking everywhere. I remember very distinctly. I was playing Thousand Sons at the time, though. Those guys could kill Wraiths all day. Rubric Marines versus Wraiths? What a one-sided matchup. Oh my god. Can you imagine playing against them with a 12-inch loan up? Yeah. I mean, you just have to play around it, right? Like, I don't know. It was what it was at that point. The big thing was that you can still, but you could 12-inch loan up the Doomstalkers. So a lot of times, like, you could engage with one Doomstalker and shoot someone, and then you could just loan up them in response and force them to retarget onto Wraiths and stuff. That just will take no damage and regenerate. But I don't know. I was just temporal surging into them. It was fine. Oh yeah, the Acanthrites were in that list too. OG. I forgot about those little guys. Yeah, they're just like little infiltrator Canoptek guys. Yeah, it's a sad time. Those were cool. Not the most impressive data sheet ever. They were expensive for what you got for them, I think. Are they still in 39K? Is it with a K? Acanthrites? No. Can't find it. I bet I have their data sheet saved on in my little database here. Let's see. Oh, people were playing Tomb Sentinels and stuff back then too. I remember this. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. These little guys, these little cute little guys. Pew pew. They're little deep strikey snake boys. Yeah, here we go. The Acanthites were neat. They could give critical bonus precision if they criticaled someone, if they shot someone with and then hit them with their little tiny melta gun, which was adorable. But they were, for this profile, they were, if I remember correctly, like 25 or 30 points a model, which is like crazy. But because like Necrons have a kind of a dearth of infiltrators, especially fast infiltrators, then you just play them anyway. They're like a flying intercessor, essentially. You just wander around and do an action. Not the most impressive unit ever, but move 12 and infiltrate's definitely something that the faction doesn't have otherwise. I forgot about these units. R.I.P. Much cooler than what kind of pyramid you're putting in Starshatter. You're not playing a pyramid in Starshatter, chat. You're playing triple Doomsday Arc. I could read out your Starshatter Arsenal build by heart. Those things, those do not change. All right. There are more Necrons to discuss. That was the only one in Top Cut, but obviously there was an undefeated one that did not make Top Cut, which we'll talk about here. What the fuck is this? I ain't reading all that, fam. Okay. At least it's not the entire script to the B movie. So at least it doesn't take like 10 years to scroll through. What a nightmare. What a nightmare in that. I remember, I think a friend of mine matched up with someone who was like copy pasting into the top end of their list submission for BCP, and they had to like report them to the judges. They're like, this is crazy. It's like 30 pages before you get to the list. Like, this is unacceptable. And they're like, yeah, we'll make them delete it. Unfortunate that's you can do that, but it is what it is. So this one's a Starshatter Arsenal. Rocking Imatech, Silent King. This one has triple Scorpek Lords. This is a very Awakened Dynasty energy. It's interesting. It's triple. It seems like a lot of armies are just like rocking the triple Scorpek Lords to deal mortal wounds, but without any other Scorpek destroyers. Like they're not running any attachments for them. They're just running the Lords themselves to wander around. One of them has Chrono Impedance Field, so he's the -1 damage guy who's gonna tag team with Emotech or with the Silent King, excuse me. Yeah, that's actually pretty common because he's much more difficult to kill than the Hexmark Destroyer. So as soon as you get within the lone operative of the Hexmark Destroyer, which you will eventually because you have to play the Silent King so aggressively in this detachment, because that's kind of the whole deal, is like you can stack buffs onto the Silent King to the point where he's impossible to kill, and then he'll just wander around the table for a while. As soon as you get up to your opponent's army, they're just going to kill the Chrono Impedance Field Hexmark guy almost immediately. But the Scorpek Destroyer, the Scorpek Lord is like, 50% or so harder to kill than the little Hexmark dude. So if your opponent's within that aura, you would the 12 inches, you would much rather have a Scorpek Lord at that point rather than a Hexmark, even if he's could potentially be shot from a longer distance in some cases. And then we have two more individual Scorpek Lords just for fighting. 5 Flayed Ones, a unit of Ophidians for supports, 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers with Gauss Destructors, 1 Canoptek Spider for the Feel No Pain to all the vehicles, triple Doomsday Arc, 1 Triarch Stalker. So otherwise pretty normal stuff. It does have the Dread Majesty Catacomb Command Barge as well, so we can do ignore modifiers with the Silent King and retain our big cool reroll aura, which is nice. I wonder how much it also helps out the Scorpek Lords too, right? Because they're like against most targets, they're like 2s into 4s hit and wound after they do mortals on the charge, and there's like a bunch of weird failure points. But if you reroll all their 1s to hit, then you're probably handing your opponent 2 to 3 saves, which is going to convert to like 6-ish damage on a lot of stuff if it's not super high toughness. So I could see it definitely for 90 points. Being able to plow a unit for like 9 damage is probably good enough. Starshatter list changed as much as the Index Thousand Suns. Fucking holy shit! Index Thousand Suns, the snooze fest of the faction. It's so sad because they were the most fun army in the game to play, and the least fun army in the game to build armies for. Because it was just it flowcharted itself into oblivion. Brutal. All right. I think last for our coverage here, chat. We can talk about Christopher Radford. So he and Andy Quest-Cohen, who's the Necron player we just talked about, tied in round 2, playing Blood Angels. What's interesting about this list, actually, I want to mention real quick, is that it actually doesn't have wraiths. Right? It's the Triarch Stalker, who's like kind of good early game because you can sort of use him as like this annoying piece before the Silent King gets up there because he scouts and then you can dump all the defensive technology on him. And then I guess the Scorpion Lords like kind of do something like that where they sort of cloud around and then just like jump on something and kill it. But yeah, no other like real heavy frontline, which is interesting. Whereas usually we would see 1 to even 2 Wraith units in that slot there. All right, but let's talk about his opponent, Christopher Radford. Never thought I'd miss 13 Baby Knights, but fortunately, Blood Angels looks like they might be okay in this matchup, in the Knights matchup. Jury's out, but they have won against them pretty consistently in the past, so we'll see if that continues. We've got a Blood Angels captain with Ragefield Warrior. So this is Liberator, obviously, because we have Ragefield Warrior. But we've got the Blood Angels captain, plus a Jump Pack captain with Speed of the Primarch, Commander Dante, 2 Death Company captains, plus Lamarty's, plus a Combat Weapon Lieutenant. So I think this is like very similar to the list that we were talking about last week when we were talking about stuff that beats Knights. And this is sort of the MSU Death Company build, I believe. We've got an Assault Intercessor squad, 3 JPI squads, Jump Pack Intercessors. Plus, yeah, here we go. A total of 20 Jump Pack Death Company. So 1 big unit of 10, which attaches Lamarty's into it. So it's like this big, annoying unit to kill because it's all -1 damage. Plus 2 units of 5 that we can use as like the little trading pieces for the Death Company captains. Those captains will grant sustained hits, which is good combo because the Death Company Marines, well, first of all, you may be gaining Lance Lethal if you Red Rampage on the charge, but they also get hit rerolls, so your chances of converting into sustained hits is pretty good. And then when they're destroyed, they can pulse mortals onto people. There's a funny interaction where they actually gain additional mortal wounds if they are killed in melee by the enemy warlord, which if you're playing against Knights is a very common occurrence because the warlord is a huge super heavy with probably a big sword. And so being able to basically like average like 2-ish mortal, 2 to 3 additional mortal wounds onto that unit when he's killing these Death Company Jump Pack captains is really funny. And then also, like, we're just, he's just another Liberator Power Fist guys, right? So he's coming in with another, like, Strength 10, 6 attack weapon with hit rerolls and sustained hits. So he's probably handing you, like 7 hits for probably 4-ish wounds. And especially if these guys are going into, like, Little Knights, for example, that are only...
Redonated $4.99 through Super Chat. A little late to the Tyranid party, but isn't it a bad sign for the meta that Hive Guard are being used to tech for Knights?
Reed, thank you for the Super Chat. Is it a bad sign for the metagame? I mean, maybe. It's not like we've never been in vehicle metas before. I do think that maybe it is the case that because it's the vehicles are so, or the heavies in the meta right now are so explicitly super heavy Knights that it might be a little bit problematic, but that's the only thing I could see there. I think that unless we were in a position where unless we get to a position, I should say, where Subterranean Assault is very popular or another monster faction like Demons is very popular, I think unless we're in that like particular slot, it seems like the shock cannon stuff might be okay into other matches, because it's not like they will have literally no things for the anti-vehicle to trigger off of. So maybe it's fine. I don't know, but it's definitely concerning that knights are like sort of explicitly the reality of the game. I would be interested to see how many shock cannon Hive Guard people play if it wasn't a Knights meta, right? If we were just talking about like Predator hull spam, like we were a couple months ago, where every list was like 9 Predators chassis, and we had all of the technology that Subterranean Assault has now. I think Subterranean Assault would actually be incredible in that matchup, by the way. But also, if you were to bring an anti-vehicle unit that could just one-shot those Predators, like, is that also reasonable? And I think the answer is probably yes. If that's the majority of what you're seeing, right? If every army that you play against is like Ultramarine Gladius Task Force with 6 vehicles, or like Death Guard Predator hull spam, or Renegade Raiders Predator hull spam, or like Bringers of the Flame hull spam, like all that stuff, suddenly this like little ignore cover anti-vehicle unit's really powerful, and I think like in that case it's probably also good. AP ignoring, or AP1 cover ignoring strength 7 can chip off infantry. Yeah, it's fine. It's not good though. You wouldn't be paying 30 points a model for 2 strength 7 shots, unless they had that huge wound bonus. Like they would need more attacks. They need to be 3 or 4 attacks at least for it to feel good, but obviously that would be too strong. I kind of wish here's the thing. Here's my thoughts, chat. I wish that these profiles, right? Haywire, shock cannons, all this stuff that had like were like dedicated anti-vehicle attackers. I wish that they had split profiles. I wish that you could be like, oh, it's the shot cannon like focused charge, or a shot cannon like dispersed charge, or something, where it's like 4 shots, strength 5, like AP 0, 1 damage or whatever, or like the big heavy anti-vehicle attack. Because like being able to take those very focused anti-one thing weapons and giving them a profile that's like good in a widespread variety of matchups, even if your other option is better in most cases, I think would make those options a lot more palatable. Like if you could fire like a haywire cannon and it was like either 2 shots anti-vehicle 4 devastating, or you could fire like D3 blast strength 5, right? Suddenly you're like, well, we have like a little bit of infantry sweeping or something that we can do in other situations, which I think would be cool. I don't know. That's my 2 thoughts about it. It'd be neat if we could sort of discharge a shock cannon into an infantry squad and electrocute people or something. AP1 and dedicated anti-tank is just, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, right? Like it does require ignore cover to work, right? Otherwise it's just bad. But also like it being anti-vehicle explicitly, I think, is unfortunate. I hope that in the future, and we probably won't see this, I think, because it sort of doesn't mesh with the narrative. But I hope that in the future we see like a marrying of mechanics for monsters and vehicles. It's sort of annoying that they're treated so differently by the game, that you have units that are explicitly good against one or the other, even though not all factions will use them to the same level. So like you run into like, oh, I'm teched for knights. I got my shot cannon Hive Guard and my haywire blasters and I'm ready to go. And then you hit knights, but instead of knights, it's 5 greater demons or 6 greater demons. And you're like, this is the same. The matchup is the same, right? If I'm playing against this, or if I'm playing against Lords of Dread, it's mostly going to go a similar way, except that they're missing a keyword. So I just fucking lose. That sucks, right? It just feels bad. And it makes a lot of those weapon options really not great to take. So, I don't know. Like Thunderkin for that, because it's anti-vehicle, but also blast. Yeah, and also, it's also like high strength, high damage, right? Or mid strength, high damage. So it's good against heavy infantry too. They are a good way to do like an anti-vehicle profile, because they do have other things that they can be doing with that gun, which is good. Whereas if you're 2 shots, like low strength, low AP, like mid damage, you're only relying on the anti-vehicle keyword, which sucks. Tyranids can adapt to either a demon in the warp and a big metal tank, but cannot fathom a horse. That's so true. At least they get Invasion Fleet gets its bonus against mounted, right? It's just like a beast. It doesn't. It's like awkwardly doesn't get. Or is it? It's infantry, a beast, and swarm, right? And it doesn't know what mount it is. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. What do you mean? It's a guy sitting on another guy. Unacceptable. Infantry or swarm. Oh, they don't even know what beasts are. God, Tyranids are dumb. I think it's a hive mind of infinite intelligence, and it forgets what like a chaos spawn sees a chaos spawn. Cannot fathom. Literally cannot fathom. I have no idea what that is. They say, what is this? What is even this thing? That's super funny. Actually, did not realize that. Incredible, chat. Needs to be one keyword. Yeah. I'd love to see it just be heavy, right? And like, while we're at it, we could probably cut Beast out. But what the fuck is Beast doing? You know, just call them infantry. They have all the same mechanics, except that like anti doesn't work against them. It's like weird. So if you just like amalgamate like infantry, beast, and swarm into one keyword, and amalgamate monster and vehicle into one keyword, I think the game gets cleaned up quite a bit. And suddenly, like, it's not the biggest deal, to be honest. Like, this isn't like there's more pressing sort of issues with 40k's core mechanics than this, but it definitely rubs me the wrong way sometimes, for sure. All right, let's finish talking about this Blood Angels list, chat. So it's got the little Death Company units. I like these. The change for Armigers and War Dogs down to toughness 9 from toughness 10 definitely like recontextualizes a lot of these like Power Fist equivalent Liberator Assault Group units, because they go to strength 10. So each of these Death Company Marines is sustained hits, right? They're 4 attacks in the charge. I'm gonna fact check myself here. I believe that's correct. Yeah, they're 4 attacks on the charge, strength 10, sustained hits 1, hit rerolls. Plus, you could lance them potentially. So they wound most vehicles on 3s, or at least like sort of War Dog chassis on 3s. They could lance to wound them on 2s. So full hit rerolls, winning on 2s, sustained plus lethal. Which is kind of horrifying when you think about it. So the unit itself is attacking 20 times with, or it's 2 Power Fists and 1 Eviscerator. So it's a couple Chain Swords, but otherwise it's 12 of these 2 damage attacks that will probably full convert, if not like 110% convert. Plus the captain, right? Who's gonna attack 6 times and hit 7 or so. So like you're probably getting somewhere around 20 or so 2 damage hits, and then if you lance that unit, they're winning on 2s, and so they're going to hand your opponent at AP 2. They're probably going to hand your opponent somewhere around like 16 saves at AP 2 damage, which for a little tiny unit of 5 dudes plus a character is kind of wild. And then they also get a bunch of Chainsword attacks in there too. So if you're this little T9 vehicle, they're just going to one tap you, and then you're going to lose out on sort of the capability to respond. We have an Infiltrator squad, 9 Sanguinary Guard, plus a Scout squad. Sanguinary Guard get attachments for both Commander Dante and the Jump Pack Captain with the Fight First. So he's a little bit harder to counterattack in. And then that's it. So it's a bunch of little, it's kind of MSU almost. It's an MSU like Jump Pack army where you have 3 Jump Pack Assault Intercessors, 3 Jump Pack Death Guard, 2 Jump Pack Sanguinary Guard. And they're all just running around. They're running around doing their silly stuff. No guns, though, is the downside. But you don't really need guns if you're just going to be advancing and charging into your opponent or rapid ingressing into them. The downside is, like, I guess screens become problematic, but you can just hop over them in most cases. Going from 5s to 1 to 3s is very dangerous. Yeah, the strength bonus plus the wound bonus is... I've been playing Salamanders recently, which I'm gonna do in about 20 minutes here. And the +1 strength plus +1 to wound combo is crazy. Getting to wound like this T4 infantry on 2s with your bolters is like, what a time to be alive. It's fucking wild, dude. But that's all I have to say about the Leeds Supermajor. That was all the results from that. pretty interesting stuff. I think that we finally come to a point of amalgamation for that. Hey, thank you for the
Ryan G donated $5 through
chat.
Super Chat. Any cult of speed? Also, I feel like Orks are being kept out of the meta by DG.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
I 100% agree that I think Death Guard is super toxic to Orks. We can take a peek here for some cult of speed. I'm not seeing any. They had a couple players at X and 1 with war hordes, it looks like. This is a dread mob at X1. Let's go. What a time to be alive. But I don't know if there's any good placing cult lists. But I definitely think that, like, Orks do have what it takes to punch through the heavy stuff, right? But they my search here is like actually like actively fucking up, which is really annoying. But it definitely feels like the fact that they get caught by blast, they get caught by like anti-infantry torrent. They have a tough time like trading into like Death Shroud Terminators like style units, makes it really tough for them. This list is listed as Orks. Oh no, it's not. It's his team name just includes Orks. I clicked on a list that said Orks and it said it was a Firestorm Assault Force. I was like, that's weird. Orks can't play Firestorm Assault Force. What are you talking about? That'd be cool though. Would that be good? Probably. Unironically, probably. We do have Dread Mob if we're interested in funny orc builds. This one's Tom Rustam at 4-1 from the Supermajor. We had a Big Mech with Gitfinder goggles, which I think is ignore cover, right? I'm going to verify. I'm going to double check myself here. Fact check. It is ignore cover on his ranged weapons for his whole unit. Double mechs plus a weird boy. We have 20 boys for the weird boy to hang out with. I wonder if there's like any particular synergy there. I don't think that there is. I think it's just like a unit that you can up down into an annoying position and then like try a 9-inch rollable charge in your opponent. Which doesn't feel great, but I don't know. Sometimes you just need to throw 20 boys into the fray. We've got 2 units of 11 Gretchen. There's no Zodgrod in this list, by the way. Pretty wild. 1 Stompa, 3 Killicans, a Gorkanaut, 10 Ludas for the Big Mech to hop into. This is also Big Mech, not a Shakatekan Big Mech. Wild. But when you're hit rerolling and then you get the sustained hits and the bonuses you can get on the onto the Ludas, they actually kind of go pretty hard, which is neat. And then double trucks. Big Stompa energy going on over here. Death Guard needs to get hit with the big nerf hammer. I know. Yeah, it's funny that like Knights are so domineering right now that we're not even really talking about Death Guard. But like the Death Guard are like still super like torqued, right? Like they've fallen off a little bit because I think that their matchup into Knights isn't like, you know, quite as good. And so everyone has to tech for Knights to kill them. I think Death Guard are fine into Knights. Like they have a pretty high win rate in that matchup, but it's probably harder than it is into other factions. Like as soon as whatever happens to Knights happens, right? Like Death Guard are still just going to be there and be annoying. And it's pretty obnoxious that I think a lot of the narrative is going to be, oh, hey, what's good against Knights? And that's what everyone takes. And we have to deal with this like Knight problem. And Death Guard are like, yes, please keep focusing on the Knights and forget that I'm here. Gonna be honest, Death Guard should have their debuff aura selected in list building and not when they see the army they're playing against. Oh, I don't agree with that. I think that optionality in like gameplay is more interesting because if you have to select it in list building, you will always select like almost certainly always select -1 AP, and so the army ability just becomes -1 toughness, -1 save, and that's not as interesting. I don't think that that's the issue with Death Guard. I don't think that Contagions of Nurgle are the problem with Death Guard. I think the problem with Death Guard is that they're applying Contagions of Nurgle to datasheets that are wildly too efficient. Like they can fire like old school fire discipline combo with like 90 points of characters. What? on non-epic hero characters that require no enhancements. What the fuck is that? Why can they do that? On a unit that also gains fire support off of their rhinos. Like, that's insane. And that's not even the best combo in the faction. Like when you cross consider Death Guard like efficiency for points versus basically any other faction in 40k, it's like pants on head. It's absolutely night and day. And I think the issue is entirely points. 100% you can just fix it with points. I think the Death Guard game plan is like very straightforward. It's very predictable. It's relatively slow. But they overwhelm you with so many high efficiency data sheets. But if every Death Guard army just had like 5 less Plague Marines and like 1 less like Death Shroud Terminator brick, they would actually be like fine. They would just be like a normal faction. But right now they're basically playing 300 points up on you, which is tough. Whoa. Valentine Puchkarov to the Soulforge Warpack meme. When undefeated at Teams event. Hell yeah, dude. Congratulations, man. That's awesome. Knights can also be fixed with points adjustments. I think, yeah. I don't know. Knights are a weird situation because I think you can fix the issue with points adjustments. I agree. But Knights basically, the thing that happened with Knights almost entirely is that they just got a bunch of points breaks for no reason, right? I think that the narrative was within the community, and mostly from Knights players, was that like, ooh, -1 toughness is such a big break point. T11 to T12 is like so huge that the fact, like, if there's not huge buffs, the faction is just fucking dead. Except that the problem is that it's like a side grade and that maybe trends downward into those matchups where those like strength 6 and strength 12 profiles are relevant. However, in literally every single other weapon profile, Knights got dramatically harder to kill. And so like so you're like, oh, you like hyper fixate on the las cannon problem, right? Where you're like, if my opponent just brings a bunch of regular ass anti-tank, I'm going to get ruined, without considering that every other faction in the entire game who maybe doesn't have regular las cannons, it like just gets screwed out by Knights getting better. And so in the best case scenario, you were like mostly a side grade, and then in every other situation you got better, and also you got a points cut. So it's like, I don't know. But I don't think that like solves the problem at the heart of the army, right? Which is that like it's always on this knife's edge, because if you ever stray too much to that efficiency level, they just outscale everything in the game. And that's what's happening right now. And it's a problem of the faction being almost entirely based in super heavies and vehicles. And I don't know how you fix that problem without revisiting the entire army. I have no idea. Like, without rewriting literally everything, I don't know how you solve that issue. There's no gameplay counter to a Death Guard go turn. You advance the spawn or blow drone to the enemy army, and then it's impossible to stop Death Shroud coming in. Well, I mean, that's true. The Death Shroud 6-inch Deep Strike thing is like the least. It's the least offensive part of them, in my opinion, because it's not like that's an ability that it doesn't exist elsewhere in the game, right? The problem is that what it's delivering is like hyper high efficiency, you know? Like, the problem is that it's delivering Death Shroud Terminators. Whereas like demons can just do that, right? Like Demonic Incursion just does that, like, normally, right? Subterranean Assault just does that, basically. And it's even more difficult to do it in Death Guard. I guess the benefit is that you can take it in multiple detachments, but let's be real. The Death Guard detachments all basically do the same thing. The difference in playstyle between Death Guard detachments is essentially non-existent. Mortarian's Hammer might take more Plague Burst Crawlers. Otherwise, you're like taking more infantry, and that's basically the only difference. Otherwise, the army's like identical. You could literally just swap Death Guard armies between different detachments, and its gameplay doesn't really change. Limit the 6-inch Deep Strike to once per turn. I guess you could do that. The demon version requires a 200-point unit to set up. No, it's just a stratagem. Demonic Incursion just has a stratagem to 6-inch Deep Strike and charge. And half of that codex has +1 to charge. It's like a 5-inch Deep Strike. Or just like 1 CP. You just do it. You don't even need a setup unit. You can use a setup unit for the rest of the army, but otherwise you could just charge out a 6-inch Deep Strike, like just normally, anywhere on the battlefield. It's exactly the same thing. I'm interested to see if tunneling continues to be good. I think that it might need a little bit of a look at if Death Guard get hit and if Knights get hit, then like Subterranean Assault might be the next good thing. It does the Tyranid offensive Tyranid profiles definitely still like are not very good. What I would like to see, here's my opinion, is if it ends up being too good, I think that the tunnel markers should be expendable. They should collapse once a unit goes through them. Because right now, like being able to doom drop your army into their army is like pretty, it's pretty good. But the problem is that you can do it anywhere. Essentially, you can like be everywhere you want. And when when one Ravener unit can deliver like 1,000 points of Tyranids, that's when it gets like really weird and problematic. But if it requires you to put 2 or 3 Raveners down, then suddenly like, you have to like commit even harder to a single game, like a single through line, and you have to expose more of your army. And I think that that's more interesting to me. It also makes it more difficult to use tunnel networks. Like it makes it more difficult to like utilize tunnels in the backline for a while. Markers get removed when an enemy gets close. Yeah, but not really. Like I've literally never seen that interaction be relevant in a game. Not one time. Unless they extended that distance to like 6 inches or something. But it doesn't matter, because the issue isn't when my opponent is ruining my tunnel markers, because almost every single time I've placed a unit out of a tunnel marker, it's been a tunnel marker that I've created that turn. So the fact that my opponent can interact with it does not fucking matter. The fact that I can place a tunnel marker and then put everything into it is really, really strong. But again, I don't know if Subterranean Assault is like necessarily too powerful right now. I think it's really good, but I also think that Tyranids otherwise are kind of like mediocre. How did you lose to the Sisters list as Subterranean Assault? Bro, that was the worst possible matchup I think I could have ever built. That was fucking wild. Because I was like, I think the Subterranean Assault list is really good. The one thing it's not good against is dedicated transport spam. And my opponent's like, here's fucking 8 dedicated transports or whatever. It's like, or it wasn't 8. It was 5, I think. It was like 2 rhinos and 3 immolators, if I remember correctly, or something like that. It was a shit ton. It was basically a list with like everything was either a super cheap transport or a combat squad. And so it was if you wanted to build an anti Subterranean Assault list, this would have been the way to do it. Like it was just a hard counter like randomly off this like super non-meta Sisters build, which honestly was cool. It was really cool. For context, chat, I played a Subterranean Assault in a tournament. And by the way, here's how this tournament went. I played that Subterranean Assault game. It was like a fucking horrible matchup, but I could have 10-10'd it. I made there's a short on my replay channel about this game because I made like one misplay. I like by like mispositioning a unit by like a millimeter that cost me a differential point, which was the deciding factor in the game. So I could have 10-10'd it because it was a WTC event, which I didn't. And I think honestly, like hitting a random like super hard counter and then 10-10'ing it realistically is like that's probably fine. I did actually much better than I expected. But then all my other games were concessions. No one else played me. Like, okay. All my opponents no-showed. So yeah, all right, man. Cool. So I 2-1 by playing one game. But anyway, that list was just it had no big central units that you could engage into. And even the stuff that like the Tyranid anti-tank is good into is not great into Sisters because of Miracle Dice, right? So as long as they have 6s in their pool, you can't like shoot at a Castigator and kill it with a Tyrannofex, because like averages, you put 1 conversion through, they just Miracle 6 it and they take 0. And then otherwise, everything was a 5-man unit or a dedicated transport or a 5-man unit in a dedicated transport. So even if you're like doom dropping Trigon Primes and all this crap, you're going to kill the transport, the unit disembarks, and then kills you with a multi-melta. And you're like, great. I traded down. I traded a 150-point monster for a 90-point transport, maybe. It was crazy. The list was really cool. So it was Bringers of Flame. I think it was like 3 Immolators, 2 Rhinos, or something like that, if I remember correctly. And then 2 or 3 Castigators. It was like 2 to 3 Retributor squads that just like hung out in the back until something happened, and then they ran up and shot. Dominion squads to combat squad into the Immolators and give them Scout. And then the Rhinos had Sanctifiers, which also grants Scout and is like another like big brick of Flamer attacks. So they get all of the benefits from Bringers of Flame. You can devastate wounds them. You can flamethrower them. No Morven Vol, no Triumph of St. Catherine, no Junitharuida. Literally all that stuff throughout. It was one Palatine was the only character. It was wild. It was really cool. I'd never seen anything like it before, but it was a very cool list. But anyway, that's how I lost with that matchup. Sisters might be tough for that army, honestly. But I don't know. I'd have to play it more often. I think I ended up like I played a game against Sisters and with like a really melee heavy version of Subterranean, and Morven Vol like ruined me. Like it killed 1,000 points of models. And so I ended up putting more Exocrines in my army after that because I think that you need them into Sisters. But that's like mostly how most of these builds are shaking out anyway. So I think that's just standard stuff. Oh, chat. I think with that though, that's all the conversation for Leeds Supermajor. I'll look into like all this stuff of the drama about the top cut and stuff like that. Obviously I haven't looked at any of it quite yet, but certainly like if we're on Supermajor level stuff and there's people just like blatantly misplaying, I do feel like I don't know, 2 years ago or so I was like very vocal against like, you know, cheating and about clean play in top table games. And it does feel like we've sort of like that back slid from that a little bit. And I do feel like there are now more like dramatic things happening, quote unquote. And so it's probably worth like taking a look into at some point. There's not a lot that Morven Vol can't terrorize. It's fucking so true. That unit's insane. That unit like really polarizes me because like to some extent Sisters are a little bit on the Tyranid spectrum where like their data sheets are kind of mediocre, and so they do need like a big brick of something that can actually kill enemies. But on the flip side, I think Morven's way too good at it. The like full hit and wound rerolls is just straight up the best leadership ability in the game, right? And normally it's like, oh, you can get full hit and wound rerolls, but it's on a Grot unit. And you're like, okay, fair enough. No. It's on a unit of vehicles that pack multi-meltas and grenade launchers. So we're like, oh, okay. So I guess that's super hyper relevant. And then we can also like compound that with Miracle Dice. Sure, man. That also gets +1 to hit and wound. Okay. So just like full converts every time. Which is like, so to some extent, I sort of recognize that Sisters kind of need the unit a little bit, but on the flip side, it's so annoying to play against because it's like so overpowered. It's pulling so much weight for the rest of the faction that it feels bad. I don't know. Anyway, chat, I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. Thanks everyone for coming and hanging out with me while we talked about this. I'm going to be live tomorrow with Tactical Tuesday at 2 p.m. US Eastern. I'm not sure what that show is going to be about, but on the flip side, please come hang out with me on Twitch. I'll post my Twitch link in the chat. I will be live over there in about 20 minutes. We're going to be playing Salamanders versus Chaos Knights. And unfortunately, it's probably going to be a game of who goes first. We'll see who goes first. And if they go first, then they'll be good. That'll be good for them. Thanks for the follows over on Twitch. I appreciate that. So I'll see you about 20 minutes over on the Twitchies. Keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming. And I'm out.